You said something 3 hours ago. The conversation ended. Everyone moved on. Everyone except you. You're replaying it. That one sentence. The way it landed. The pause that came after. Did they take it wrong? Did you sound desperate? Too eager? Too cold? You're running the whole thing back like surveillance footage, looking for the moment everything went sideways. Except nothing went sideways. Probably, you think. If that's familiar, stay with me, because what's actually happening inside your brain isn't what most people think. The easy explanation is anxiety, and sure, anxiety is part of it, but the real mechanism goes deeper than that, and understanding it might be the most useful thing you hear today. Here's where it starts. Your brain doesn't treat the past as finished. It treats it as unresolved data. Every conversation you walk away from gets filed, and your mind keeps returning to the ones it couldn't fully process in real time. Not because you're broken, because you're running a very specific kind of cognitive software. Psychologists call it post-event processing. It's the mental habit of reviewing social situations after they've ended, scanning for errors, threats, anything that might have caused damage you haven't detected yet. And research consistently shows it's more common in people with high social intelligence, not low, high. Let that land for a second. The people who replay conversations the most aren't the ones who read social situations poorly. They're often the ones who read them too well. They pick up on micro-expressions, tonal shifts, slight hesitations. They notice everything. And when you notice everything, you have a lot more data to process. But here's where it gets complicated. Your brain doesn't replay conversations accurately. It edits them. There's a well-documented phenomenon called the spotlight effect, studied extensively by researchers at Cornell. It's the tendency to believe other people are paying far more attention to you than they actually are. You felt the awkward pause. You heard the flatness in your own voice. But the other person? They were thinking about what they were having for dinner. They weren't dissecting you. They were barely listening. Your brain doesn't know that, so it keeps reviewing footage of a crime scene where no crime actually occurred. And there's something else happening underneath this, something that doesn't get talked about enough. People who overthink conversations after they end often grew up in environments where reading the room wasn't optional. Maybe a parent's mood was unpredictable. Maybe saying the wrong thing had real consequences. Maybe you learned early that words mattered, that tone mattered, that the slightest misstep could change the temperature of an entire house. So your brain built a system, a very sophisticated, very exhausting early warning system, constantly scanning, constantly analyzing, constantly running simulations of how things could have gone wrong, so that next time you'd be ready. The problem is, next time never quite comes the way you planned for it, so the system keeps running, long after the conversation ended, long after it stopped being useful. A 2020 study published in Cognitive Therapy and Research found that repetitive negative thinking about past social interactions was one of the strongest predictors of social anxiety, not just a symptom of it, meaning the replaying itself makes the fear worse. Every time you rerun the tape, you're training your brain to treat that conversation as a threat. You're teaching it that the danger hasn't passed yet. It becomes a loop. You overthink because you're anxious. The overthinking increases the anxiety. The anxiety makes the next conversation harder to fully inhabit, because part of your brain is already preparing for the post-game analysis. And here's the part that stings a little. The thing you're searching for in all that replay? Certainty. You want to know for sure that they're not upset, that they don't think less of you, that you're still okay in their eyes. But that certainty is structurally impossible to get. You cannot control what another person thinks. You cannot rewind and re-record. And the mind that needs certainty the most is often the mind least able to tolerate the absence of it. This is what researchers call intolerance of ambiguity, and it's almost always at the core of post-event processing. The brain would rather spin endlessly in discomfort than sit with not knowing. Spinning feels like doing something. Sitting with uncertainty feels like giving up. But you're not actually solving anything in the replay. You're just keeping the file open. There's another piece of this that most people never connect. The overthinking often peaks at night, not randomly, deliberately. During the day, there's noise, tasks, movement, things demanding your attention. Your brain is occupied. But the moment external stimulation drops, the unresolved files surface. It's called the default mode network, the brain's background processing system that activates during quiet and rest. For overthinkers, that network doesn't rest, it audits. And nighttime is when it does its deepest work, which is why you can survive the whole day just fine and then fall apart at 11 p.m. over something you said at lunch. Now, none of this means you're condemned to it. Understanding the mechanism is the first move, because the loop has a very specific entry point. It usually starts with a question your brain can't answer. Did I say that wrong? Were they annoyed? Do they think I'm too much? The brain keeps returning because it keeps asking unanswerable questions. The interruption isn't to force yourself to stop thinking. That doesn't work. The interruption is to notice the question and ask a different one. Not, did I come across badly? But is there any actual evidence that something went wrong? Not, why did I say that? But would I judge someone else this harshly for saying the same thing? That last one matters more than it sounds. Because people who overthink conversations are almost never as critical of others as they are of themselves. They'd forgive a friend instantly for the exact thing they've been prosecuting themselves over for 3 hours. There's a name for that gap. Self-compassion research by Kristen Neff at the University of Texas identifies it as the core wound beneath most repetitive, self-critical thinking. You hold yourself to a standard you'd never apply to anyone you actually care about. And the quieter truth underneath all of it is this. The reason you replay is because connection matters to you, deeply. You're not overthinking because you're weak. You're overthinking because being understood, being okay in someone's eyes, being safe in a relationship, those things genuinely matter to you. That's not a flaw. That's not damage. That's being human. Just turned up a little louder than most people let themselves admit. The conversations you replay the most are the ones with people you actually care about. You don't analyze small talk with strangers for 3 hours. You analyze the ones where something real was at stake. That's not anxiety. That's caring. It just needs somewhere useful to go. So the next time you catch yourself in the replay, here's what's actually true. The conversation ended. They went home. They're probably not thinking about it. And even if something landed slightly off, most people are too occupied with their own internal surveillance footage to spend much time reviewing yours. You can put the tape down. Not because it doesn't matter, but because you've already done enough. If this hit a little close to home, you'll want to watch this next. Click it.